You're watching India Global. I'm Gauri Dwivedi. Let's get you the big stories that we are tracking this hour for you. First up, over 1 lakh join London's largest anti-immigration rally. Will legal immigrants face the wrath of the anti-immigrant protests? And will this become the litmus test for Starmer Sarkar? Nepal is set to hold its parliamentary polls on the 5th of March. Roads set for the transition to democracy in Kathmandu, even as questions remain as far as Bangladesh is concerned, where second university poll has been swept by radical Islamist group. What lies ahead in Dhaka, even as the treacherous road to democracy in Nepal we decode. No corn, no deal. That's the word coming in from the US. Will the corn become the major thorn as far as thrashing a trade deal between India and the US is concerned? We tell you more as Howard Lutnick, the man who many call as Trump's bully in chief, warns India to take the GM crops and GM corn. India-Pakistan Asia Cup handshake row escalates. Pakistan protests India's refusal to shake hands. Adolescents, the studio and the pit dominate Emmy Awards. Adolescents is Owen Cooper, youngest male acting winner. The big story that we are focusing on India Global today. Is it nationalism or is it a growing threat to immigrants? Dubbed as Britain's largest free speech festival, this and in fact, the Unite the Kingdom rally was perhaps the country's largest anti-immigrant protest in recent history. Thousands, in fact, the BBC said 1.5 lakh people had gathered by one man, far-right activist Tommy Robinson, chanting slogans, "We want our country back," and sent them home. That's what those chants were all about. The demonstrators also chanted crude refrains about UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer, saying Starmer a wonker, and also shouted messages of support for Charlie Kirk, the man who was killed this week. Tommy Robinson showed his solidarity, and which is the reason why this protest came about. Elon Musk, the man who's, for some strange reason, isn't in the news so much these days. He also slammed the UK government, calling for the fall of the Starmer government. Immigration claims that migrants are taking jobs and resources, and the worsening of crime rate were primarily the two reasons behind the anger and the protest that broke out. What does this mean as far as the Indian community is concerned, the diaspora there? And also, will this have an impact as far as the India-UK relationship is concerned? And really the elephant in the room that we're going to talk about. How quickly do things that target the illegal immigrants suddenly talk about the legal immigrants as well? Will that happen here as well? We're going to decode that for you. But first up, listen in to what Tommy Robinson had to say, the man who started this protest and whose clarion call saw 1.5 lakh people on the streets of London. Listen in.
We came in our millions, okay? The biggest protest in British history. You, the British public, have now made London the battleground for this fight. We're going to do it again. I'm sorry, some people couldn't hear because there was too many of us. We didn't get to finish it. We didn't get to give our closing speeches. We didn't get to tell you our vision of how we can change this country, but we're going to. We're going to do it again. Unite the Kingdom, unite the West. It's a cry for help. We want world leaders. We want them coming from all over the globe. London has been chosen. You, the British public, have made that happen. Don't talk about change, be the change. That's the reality, yeah? That's what we need.
All right, so the clarion call of Tommy Robinson was answered. There were thousands of people on the streets. But what happens next here? Is this now going to be a larger movement targeting illegal immigrants? How should the Indian diaspora be looking at it? There are a lot of Indians who are in the UK, who want to go to the UK. And will that be affected? Those are the big questions. We put that out for you. First up, is this free speech or is it far-right nationalism? And will this dovetail into the larger far-right movement that one is seeing across the UK Germany is the other one. Next, will anti-immigrant protests topple the Starmer government? Elon Musk has spoken about it. Nigel Farage has a lot of momentum and support going on it. And people on the streets are chanting what they see as an anti-Starmer slogans. Will that lead to Starmer government being on shaky ground? He asked that question. Will legal immigrants face the brunt of these protests? And lastly, should the Indian diaspora in the UK, how do they view this? Are they in some sort of trouble? Do they have reasons to worry? Those are the other questions that we're going to put out. Professor Scott Lucas joins me on the broadcast, Professor of US and International Politics, Clinton Institute, joining me from London. I also have Harjap Singh Bangal, who is an UK immigration and human rights lawyer. Well, several people actually call him the immigration guru, actually. Okay, so let's start with you, Professor Scott. These are protests that were essentially about uniting the kingdom. It was a clarion call by Tommy Robinson. But I'm going to try and look it through the lens of people who will get impacted in it and focus solely on the Indians. I'm going to come to the bit about how Tommy Robinson has made a distinction between the Indian immigrants and several others in just a bit. He's in fact spoken about it, saying Indians have a separate, they are better than the rest. They're lower in the crime rate. I'm going to come to that in just a bit. But your first thought on how do you see this protest through the lens of the Indian British immigrant?
Well, I think I leave it to Indian British immigrants, or indeed Indians who are UK citizens, to speak. But to give you my observations as someone who lived in the UK for almost 40 years, first, this is not a uniting the kingdom rally. This was a rally led by the far right for particular groups that the far right likes. This was, and we must be honest here, this was not just anti-undocumented immigrants. This was also anti-refugee. It was anti-asylum seeker. It is anti-legal immigrant. Because despite what Tommy Robinson will say, oh, you Indians are okay, you can stick around, this was largely a rally for an England which is a white England, a Britain which is a white Britain. This is what we call not nationalism, it's nativism. Now, there are other people who were there who may not ascribe to the far right. They may say they were there for other reasons, such as legitimate concerns over immigration. But the leadership of this was not just Tommy Robinson. It was also the Trumpist chief strategist, Steve Bannon, who has called for white nationalism, even white supremacy. It was members of the far right from Germany, the AfD, from other European far right groups. So yes, without raising this, no need to be hysterical, no need to be fearful, but there is reason for concern here that these groups do not want to unite the kingdom. They want to promote their idea of the good groups. And they want to demonize those who are not good.
Harjap Singh, let me ask through the lens of British Indians there, those who are legal immigrants. They contribute to the society legally, they pay taxes, they are part of the system there. What about them? Do they stand to get impacted? And also, let's also put a lens on the undocumented ones as well, or the illegal immigrants as well, those who go from India to the UK.
Yes, I think I agree with a lot of what the professor has to say. And the fact that this is a far-right movement funded by the far-right. And now, it's very important to say that everybody there was not far-right. But they are definitely, the far-right is attempting to influence them by painting people who don't look like them, don't talk like them, don't have the same customs like them, as outsiders. And for British Indians as well, it's a matter of concern, because many of those people who are marching as well do believe that even people like myself who are born and bred in the UK shouldn't be here. You only have to look at X, formerly known as Twitter, to see the amount of vile comments made towards British Indians on there. And it's a very, very dangerous thing if Indians actually welcome this guy, Tommy Robinson, that's not even his real name, who is in fact convicted of many offences, including fraud and thuggery and violence, and even deported for using a fake passport. He has been himself. Indians should not welcome him. It's a result of his whipping up frenzy and Nigel Farage reform frenzy.
You're not going to get any answers by bashing Tommy Robinson, right? I mean, or by delegitimizing him, because there are 1.5 lakh people on the streets who are answering his clarion call. Let's now talk about how this goes from here.
1.5 lakh people is not a lot of people, considering when you stop the Iraq war rally, there was 1 million people on the street. So I think that's very important to have. How we go from here is we have to influence governments, and we have to out these people and show what the real agenda of these organizations is. British Indians are a threat. There's been an arrest made over the weekend of a rape of a British Sikh girl in the Birmingham area by white people who were saying to her, go back to your own country, we don't want you here, whilst raping her. Now, if that isn't a big threat, then I don't know what that is, if that isn't a concern for Indians. Also, the pressure put on the government regarding immigration has had an effect on legal immigrants as well. Student visa dependents have been stopped. Work permit dependents have been stopped. Carer visas have been stopped from India. As a lot of things, the salary required to bring an Indian over as your partner has been upped, and a lot of people have been excluded. A lot of Indians have been excluded for that because they're not in that well-paid jobs. So it is having an effect everywhere. And Indian government has been put under pressure in trade deals to take back their illegal migrants. Otherwise, there could be a clamping down on the number of visas given to Indians. This is a big concern. This is as a result of all the pressure being put on the governments by people like Farage and Tommy Robinson. And it's not about bashing anyone. If someone's right, you're right. If you're wrong, you're wrong. How people, who have descended from migrants themselves are now calling and attempting to divide and rule. This is, in fact, what it is. It's trying to play Indians off against other migrants, European migrants off against Indian migrants. This is what's happening, in fact, and the agenda is.
Speaking about that Sikh woman and racist attacks, Professor Lucas, do you see those increasing going forward? Is there a public mood and sentiment in favor of, or that may create the atmosphere towards increasing such racist or crime against a particular race or ethnicity?
Regrettably, when you get, under the guise of free speech, when you get hate speech, when you get this poison that's not just by individuals like Tommy Robinson, but indeed on certain national UK television stations that's, let's be honest here, work for the Reform Party, when you get that poison spread, it does raise the risk of attacks. In my country where I live now, in Ireland, there have been a spate of attacks on Indians who live here legally because we also get this same poisonous rhetoric. And so my fear is that without a dignified, responsible pushback on this, you wind up having further division and, yes, further violence. And again, speaking, with my colleague who put this very, very well, this starts with a dignified, responsible call for action by the government, not to call Britain an island of strangers, but to talk about the contributions of all groups, including immigrants, to the United Kingdom. It starts with responsibility in the universities. It starts with responsibility across all professional groups, not to give into this type of language, but to say that on the whole, immigrants have helped improve the United Kingdom economically, socially, and culturally.
Indeed. Final closing comments, Harjap Singh, very quickly, which is, if you have to give one message to the British Indian community in the wake of these attacks, what would that be? And a message to the authorities, what would that be? Very quickly.
Stay safe, stay united, try and find out the reasons behind it. Do not allow to be divided. Unity is the strength. Use your common sense. Don't buy into the rhetoric. See the people and recognize the people who are trying to amplify this hate, because ultimately, once they're finished with one group, they will then come for you.
All right, I'll leave it there, gentlemen. Thanks so much for joining me on India Global. Well, viewers, bottom line on this really is that as far as the anti-immigration protest is concerned, there is now a groundswell in favor of what many would term as a far-right protest, which is about negating the other, which is about ensuring that communities that contribute to the British economy are also completely ignored. Will that mean legal immigrants will be under threat? Will that mean that pressure will mount on Starmer government to act more? There's already been some movement as far as visas are concerned and several others. That has already been going on. Will there now be a further movement on that? That's the big question. And lastly, how will authorities respond to growing racist attacks is really going to be the defining moment as far as Keir Starmer is concerned. All right, viewers, even as we speak about these racist attacks, don't forget there's been a viral video that's come from London which has sparked a huge debate on social media. You have an anti-immigration protester actually buying onion bhaji from one of those outlets that are owned by the Indian community. And that just sums it up for you that this is what integrated society is all about. And these protests are negating all of that. Welcome back. Let's get you the other big story that we are tracking on India Global. Well, that is regarding yet another reason for a fresh thorn as far as the India-US talks are concerned. This time, it is over corn, as US Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick has said that Washington claims that India is taking advantage of the US market, saying India sells everything to the US but will not buy its corn, not even one bushel of corn. That's what he said, asserting that New Delhi just bring down tariffs or face a tough time doing business as far as the US is concerned. And let's tell you, viewers, why is it that India cannot succumb to A, it cannot succumb to these strong arm tactics, and B, why corn could actually mean a huge deal breaker for this trade deal. Now, first and foremost, US has said to India that you buy our corn or you lose market access. India is the 5th largest corn producer, and most importantly, you have politically sensitive states like Bihar being being very significant in terms of overall production. Bihar is there, UP is there. That is the other part of it, which is why it's politically sensitive and what happens to our farmers. Let's move ahead and tell you why is it that this is important. Largely, we are self-sufficient. We also export to other countries. Now, corn actually has a very long chain of residue products. Some of it gets used in ethanol. Some of it actually gets exported as it is. So those residue products have a long supply chain, and some of it we export, some of it we use for our ethanol. Now, going forward, with sugar industry really not looking at very large amounts of growth going forward, ethanol is a very substantial part of their future business roadmap, and which is why ethanol becomes the reason why US corn cannot be taken as it is by India. Add to it the fact that it's genetically modified. There are concerns in India that we cannot allow GM corn. It extends to GM soya bean as well. And lastly, right to protect Indian farmers. Now, this is where all of it sort of comes up. One, the fact that what do we do when we do not want to have GM crops? B, what do we do with the fact that there is now 19% of fuel that comes from ethanol, where prices of ethanol have actually gone up, along with prices of fuel. Now, all of that dovetails into farmers' income. If you take all of that away, then that is actually going to have a huge impact about how India is going to protect farmer incomes, which is why it's not just about corn, it's about protecting Indian farmers, which is why it's going to be a bit of a deal breaker going forward. All right, turning attention now to the other big story that we are tracking on the show, which is India's neighborhood. It has actually seen massive turmoil. Last year it was Bangladesh. This year it is Nepal. It has been pretty much the same template. You had violent student protests, which actually led to overthrowing the government. In Kathmandu, what looks like a huge sigh of relief is the fact that the Nepal new Prime Minister has said that she is going to conduct elections in 6 months. And she said that she's only going to be there for a limited period of time. That's very significant. She said that I'm going to be here only for some time, and my single biggest objective for the government is that there will be elections on the 5th of March. Now contrast that with how things have been playing out as far as Bangladesh is concerned. That's a completely different story, where you have student university elections being won by organizations that are extremely radical, extremely Islamist in their outlook. And that adds to Dhaka's fractured polity, as the Islamist-led 8-party grouping demands exclusion of 14 political parties and the entire election system. Now, with this victory that happened at Jahangir University, located near the capital, Shibir now has two of the most important university campuses under its control in Bangladesh. The reason why we are talking? Well, this entire movement actually ostensibly started from the students, right? It started from the youth protesting, which is why these student university campuses, if they come under the control of these Islamist organizations, it sends a very strong message. And that's exactly what the bottom line, really, viewers, is here. As far as India's neighborhood is concerned, there's been huge turmoil, but India has been waiting, urging and goading all parties to come back to the electoral democratic roadmap. Nepal seems to have already come to that. It is pointing to that as well, saying that in the next 6 months we'll get onto it. Bangladesh remains a matter of concern. There is still no date that has come out for Bangladesh. It has already been over a year. Till now, we are waiting for when that date for the election will be and when that entire process will take place. The fact that these university campuses are becoming hotbed for radical Islamist thought is another reason for New Delhi to be very cautious going forward as far as a volatile neighborhood is concerned. Turning attention now to the other big story, US President Donald Trump has now strongly condemned the brutal killing of Chandra, an Indian origin motel manager who was beheaded in Dallas last week. Donald Trump finally had to speak. This is a crime, viewers, that sends shockwaves across anybody. The man was beheaded and then his head was tossed around. That is what happened. He was a Cuban migrant, but finally Donald Trump had to speak, and he spoke in the words that matter, which is fullest extent of the law will be taken care. He'll not just be charged in the murder in the first degree, but he also said that enough is enough. You cannot be soft on illegal immigrants. That's the big story. But this is part of now a pattern that's emerging. Unfortunately, there is a 73-year-old Sikh woman who's also been detained by immigration authorities in California. So as I said, there are these two events that you cannot sort of completely detach from each other. The reason for that is you have this Sikh woman who's been attacked and she went for a routine checkup with the agency. There's been protest and concerns among her family and members of the community. That is one aspect of what is happening, which is Harjeet Kaur. And then there is Chandra M., the man who was targeted. We still don't know why. And this is the truth and reality of America that we need to keep speaking about, because the 5 million strong diaspora that exists in America, that's the backbone of the American economy. And those pictures on your screens are the most gory crimes that have been committed against that diaspora in just a matter of days. India Global will keep coming back to you with those details and updates about what really are the American authorities doing about it. All right, turning attention now to an update coming in as far as trade talks. Donald Trump, remember, is a man who's on a mission to try and cut trade deals. He hasn't been able to do so with China so far. Talks are continuing on economic and trade issues. This is happening in Madrid between the Chinese and American delegations. Chinese vice premier is also a member of the political bureau of the Communist Party. And the US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent led respective teams met there. And it remains to be seen whether there will be any breakthrough in those talks or not.